Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the Retribution, watching the stars ahead grow brighter. After 3,000 years, humans were finally returning to the galaxy they once called home. His hands gripped the rail as memories of old Earth stories filled his mind. Stories his grandfather told him about the time before the exile. "Captain, we're approaching the first marker," said Ryan Clark from his navigation station. The young officer's voice carried excitement mixed with fear. None of them knew what they would find out here. Lisa Hamilton looked up from her science station. Her job was to study alien life, but today she was searching for traces of human life instead. The star charts show the system as empty space, but our old records say there should be a colony here called New Boston. Jake nodded slowly. The Hegemony Alliance had thrown humanity out of the galaxy 3,000 years ago. They said humans were too violent, too unpredictable. The 12 alien races that ruled the galaxy decided Earth's people had to leave and never come back. But the exile was supposed to be temporary. It was supposed to end after humans learned to be peaceful. "Take us in closer," Jake ordered. "Let's see what happened to our people." The Retribution moved deeper into the system. It was a beautiful ship, built with 3,000 years of human innovation. While the rest of the galaxy had forgotten about them, humans had been busy. They learned to build better ships, better weapons, better everything. The exile had made them stronger. Ashley Brooks walked onto the bridge. She was the ship's military commander, tough as steel and twice as sharp. "Captain, I'm picking up some strange readings from the third planet. It's where New Boston should be." Lisa's face went pale as she read her instruments. "There's no life here at all. The planet shows signs of complete sterilization. Every living thing was killed." Jake felt his blood run cold. "What do you mean, sterilized?" "I mean someone burned this world clean," Lisa said quietly. "Not just the humans, everything. Every plant, every animal, every microbe. It's dead." Ryan checked his readings twice before speaking. "Captain, I'm finding similar dead zones throughout this sector. 12 systems that used to have human colonies. All of them show the same pattern." Jake stared at the view screen. The planet below looked normal from space, but he knew it was a tomb. "Take us down," he said. "We need to see this with our own eyes." The landing party included Jake, Ashley, Lisa, and 6 Marines. They walked through what used to be the capital city of New Boston. The buildings were still standing, but they were empty. Not just empty of people, empty of everything. No plants grew in the streets. No birds flew in the sky. Even the soil was dead. "This wasn't an accident," Ashley said, kneeling beside what looked like a blast mark. "This was systematic, professional." Lisa ran her scanner over the ground. The radiation signature suggests plasma bombardment, but not random bombing. They targeted every living cell on this planet. They found the first clue in the ruins of the colony's communication center. Hidden beneath layers of melted metal, Lisa discovered a data core that had somehow survived. The information inside made Jake's hands shake with rage. The recording showed the last days of New Boston. Families running through the streets as alien ships filled the sky. Children crying as their parents tried to find places to hide. And then the voice of the colony's leader, speaking into the communicator with his last breath. "This is Governor Williams of New Boston. The Hegemony fleet is here. They're not here to arrest us or move us somewhere else. They're here to kill us all. Every human settlement is being attacked at the same time. They lied to Earth. This was never about exile. This was always about genocide." The recording continued with the sound of plasma fire and screaming. Then silence. Jake looked at his team. Every face showed the same expression of shock and anger. "How many colonies were there?" he asked quietly. Ryan pulled up the old charts. 347 human settlements across the galaxy. Population estimates suggested over 200 billion people. "Gone," Lisa whispered. "All of them gone." They found more evidence as they searched the ruins. Medical centers that had been specifically targeted. Schools that were bombed while children were still inside. Even the memorial gardens where colonists buried their dead had been dug up and destroyed. The aliens wanted to erase every trace that humans had ever existed, but they found something else too. In the deepest part of the colony's emergency bunker, Ashley discovered another data core. This one was different. It was new technology, hidden and protected by systems the aliens couldn't break. The message inside was from Earth. From Jake's own people, 3,000 years in the future. "If you're watching this, then the first phase of our return has begun," said a voice Jake didn't recognize. We know what happened to the colonies. We've been watching. We've been waiting. And we've been preparing. The message continued. The galaxy thinks we're extinct. Let them keep thinking that. But know this. Every human who died here will be avenged. Every child they murdered will be remembered. The hegemony wanted to end the human story. Instead, they just made sure it would have a very different ending. Jake felt something change inside him as he listened. The sadness was still there, but it was being replaced by something harder. Something dangerous. Captain, Ashley said, checking her communicator. We're getting a signal from the fleet. Admiral Stone wants to speak with you immediately. As they walked back to their shuttle, Jake looked one last time at the dead city of New Boston. Somewhere out there, the aliens who did this were living peaceful lives. They probably never thought about the humans they killed. They probably slept well at night. That was about to change. The shuttle lifted off from the graveyard that used to be a human world. Behind them, New Boston remained silent and empty. But ahead of them, the galaxy was about to learn that reports of humanity's death had been greatly exaggerated. Jake looked at his crew. They were different people now than they had been that morning. The knowledge of what happened here had changed them all. Made them harder. Made them angry. Set course for the fleet, he ordered. It's time to let the galaxy know we're back. The Retribution turned away from the dead world and jumped into hyperspace. Behind them, the tomb of New Boston kept its secrets. Ahead of them, 3,000 years of planning and preparation were about to bear fruit. The exile was over. The reckoning was about to begin. Admiral Kevin Stone stood in the command center of the Defiance, watching thousands of ships move through the darkness between galaxies. The hidden fleet stretched as far as the eye could see. Battleships, carriers, destroyers, and support vessels, all built in secret over 3,000 years of exile. Report, Kevin said to his senior staff. Maria Rodriguez, his chief engineer, stepped forward. Her weathered hands showed the scars of decades spent building this fleet. All ships are ready for combat, Admiral. The new quantum drives are performing perfectly. We can be anywhere in the galaxy within hours. Kevin nodded. The quantum drives were humanity's greatest achievement. While the galaxy used hyperspace lanes that could be predicted and blocked, humans had learned to fold space itself. They could appear anywhere, anytime without warning. What about weapons? He asked. Chris Baker, the intelligence officer, smiled grimly. The emotional resonance cannons are fully charged. After 3,000 years of studying hegemony psychology, we know exactly how to hurt them where it counts. Kevin remembered the day they discovered that most alien species in the galaxy were telepathic or used hive minds. What made them strong in peacetime made them weak in war. Human emotions properly focused and amplified could shatter alien mental networks like glass. Sir, said Dr. Nathan King, the fleet's genetic specialist. The adaptation program has exceeded all expectations. Our people can now survive in environments that would kill any hegemony species. We've become something they never expected. Kevin thought about that. 3,000 years ago, humans were just one species among many. Now they were something new. Something forged by exile, loss, and the burning need for justice. The aliens who threw them out would not recognize what they had become. A communication officer approached. Admiral, Captain Morrison is requesting permission to come aboard. He says he has information about the colonies. Send him up, Kevin said. He had been waiting for this report. Jake Morrison entered the command center an hour later. His face was pale and his eyes held a hardness that Kevin recognized. It was the look of someone who had seen too much truth. What did you find? Kevin asked quietly. Jake placed a data chip on the table. They killed them all. Every human settlement in the galaxy. 200 billion people dead. Men, women, children. Even the babies. The room fell silent. Kevin had suspected this was true. But hearing it confirmed still hit like a physical blow. Around him, his officers clenched their fists and gritted their teeth. It wasn't random, Jake continued. It was planned. Systematic. They hunted down every human in the galaxy and exterminated them like insects. Maria Rodriguez spoke first. Then we make them pay. Kevin held up his hand. We will, but not from anger. From calculation. We've been preparing for this day for 3,000 years. We're not going to waste it on mindless revenge. He activated the main display, showing a three-dimensional map of the galaxy. Red dots marked hegemony worlds. Blue dots marked human positions. The galaxy was surrounded by blue. While they thought we were gone, we've been watching, Kevin explained. We know their military positions, their trade routes, their political divisions. We know which species are loyal to the hegemony and which ones are just afraid. Chris Baker added more details. The Karathi Empire leads the hegemony, but they're not popular. The Nexari Collective provides most of the military strength, but they're vulnerable to psionic attack. The other 10 species are mostly followers who do what they're told. Kevin studied the map. We have advantages they don't know about. Our ships are invisible to their sensors. Our weapons can destroy their minds as well as their bodies. And most importantly, they think we're extinct. Dr. King spoke up. There's something else, Admiral. The genetic modifications aren't just about survival. Our people are stronger, faster, and smarter than baseline humans. 3,000 years of careful selection has created something new. Kevin knew this was true. The children born in the Hidden Fleet were different from their ancestors. They could think faster, fight harder, and survive almost anything. The exile had forged humanity into a weapon. What about their defenses? Asked Jake. Maria smiled coldly. Their technology hasn't advanced much in 3,000 years. They've been comfortable, safe, unchallenged. Meanwhile, we've been innovating out of necessity. Our worst ships are better than their best. Kevin walked to the viewport and looked out at the fleet. Each ship represented decades of work, sacrifice, and planning. The people who built them had never seen the galaxy their grandparents came from. But they still remembered the stories. They still felt the anger. There's something you all need to understand, Kevin said. This isn't just about revenge. It's about justice. But it's also about survival. If we let the hegemony continue to exist, they'll try to finish what they started. We can't let that happen. Jake nodded slowly. So what's the plan? Kevin activated another display, showing ship movements and attack vectors. We hit them simultaneously across 12 systems, fast, hard, and without mercy. But we're not just destroying military targets. We're going to make them afraid. Afraid of what? Asked Maria. Afraid of us, Kevin said simply. For 3,000 years, they've lived with the comfortable lie that humans are gone. We're going to shatter that lie and replace it with nightmares. Chris Baker pulled up intelligence reports. We've identified the key leaders. The ones who voted for the genocide. The ones who gave the orders. The ones who pulled the triggers. They're going to die first. Kevin looked around the room at his officers. These people had dedicated their lives to this moment. Their parents and grandparents had done the same. 3,000 years of preparation were about to pay off. There's one more thing, Dr. King said quietly. The psychological effects of the exile. Our people aren't just angry about what happened. They're different because of it. Harder, more focused. Some might say more dangerous, Kevin nodded. He had seen the reports. Humans born in exile thought differently than their ancestors. They were more willing to do whatever was necessary to survive. More willing to make the hard choices. That might be what we need, he said. The old humanity was too trusting, too willing to believe that others would play fair. We can't afford to be that naive again. Jake looked at the fleet display. When do we begin? Kevin smiled, and it was not a pleasant expression. We've already begun. The first ships are moving into position as we speak. In 72 hours, the hegemony will learn that humanity has returned. He turned to face his officers. Signal all ships. Operation Homecoming begins now. It's time to remind the galaxy why they were afraid of us in the first place. As his staff rushed to carry out orders, Kevin remained at the viewport. Somewhere out there, billions of aliens were living peaceful lives. They had families, dreams, hopes for the future. They probably never thought about the humans they had killed. In 3 days, that would all change. The galaxy was about to remember that extinction and exile were not the same thing, and some lessons could only be taught in blood. Steve Parker felt the familiar tingle of quantum phase transition as his ship, the Vengeance, materialized in Karathi space. Around him, 50 other human warships appeared like ghosts stepping out of shadows. The Karathi homeworld of Draktar Prime hung before them, green and beautiful and completely undefended. All ships, this is Captain Parker, he said into his communicator. Remember, we're not here to conquer. We're here to deliver a message. Amy Foster checked her fighter systems from the hangar bay. She was about to become the first human pilot to fly in Karathi airspace in 3,000 years. The thought made her hands shake with excitement and anger. Fighter squadrons, prepare for launch, came the order from the bridge. Amy strapped herself in and ran through her final checks. Her fighter was small, fast, and completely invisible to Karathi sensors. The quantum phase generator would keep her ship existing in multiple dimensions at once, making her impossible to target. The Karathi defense fleet was already moving to intercept them. Massive ships with plasma cannons and energy shields, technology that had kept them safe for thousands of years. They had no idea how useless it was about to become. "Contact in 30 seconds, reported Tony Wright from the tactical station. "Karathi fleet is forming battle lines. They're trying to communicate with us." Steve smiled coldly. "Let them talk. We'll answer with actions." The first Karathi plasma blast passed harmlessly through the Vengeance. The alien gunners fired again and again, but their weapons couldn't lock onto targets that existed in quantum superposition. Meanwhile, human emotional resonance cannons charged up, ready to deliver pain directly into Karathi minds. "Fire," Steve ordered. The human fleet opened up with weapons the galaxy had never seen before. Beams of focused human emotion, rage, grief, determination, struck the Karathi ships. The reptilian aliens, who thought with cold logic, suddenly found their minds flooded with feelings they couldn't understand or control. Karathi crews screamed as 3,000 years of human anger poured into their consciousness. Ship after ship went dark as alien minds simply shut down from emotional overload. The mighty Karathi fleet, terror of the galaxy for millennia, was reduced to floating wreckage in minutes. Amy launched her fighter as the last Karathi ship exploded. The planet below was now defenseless, its orbital stations destroyed, its defense grid offline. She dove toward the surface, leading a squadron of human fighters into an atmosphere that hadn't seen human ships since the exile. "This is for New Boston," she whispered, targeting the first Karathi military base. Human plasma cannons, enhanced with quantum technology, tore through Karathi shields like paper. Military installations that had stood for thousands of years crumbled under the assault. But Steve had given strict orders, only military targets. The civilians were to be left alive. Rachel Green monitored communications from her station aboard the Vengeance. The Karathi were broadcasting on every frequency, panic clear in their voices. "They're saying it's impossible," she reported. "Their records show humanity was completely destroyed 3,000 years ago. They're calling us ghosts." Steve activated the main communication array. It was time to deliver the real message. He opened a channel to every receiver on Draktar Prime and throughout the Karathi Empire. "People of the Karathi Empire," he began, his voice calm and cold. "My name is Captain Steve Parker of the human fleet. Yes, humans, the species you thought you had exterminated." He paused, letting that sink in before continuing. 3,000 years ago, your leaders voted to exile humanity from the galaxy. But exile wasn't enough for you, was it? You hunted down every human settlement. You murdered our children. You burned our worlds clean of life. On the planet below, Karathi civilians huddled in their homes, listening to the voice of a species they thought was extinct. "You made one mistake," Steve continued. "You didn't make sure we were all dead. Humanity survived in the dark between galaxies. We've been watching you, learning about you, preparing for this day." Amy's squadron finished destroying the last military target on the continent. The planet's defenses were completely gone, but not a single civilian had been harmed. The message was clear. Humans could have killed everyone, but chose not to. "We could destroy your world right now," Steve said over the communication channel. "We could do to you what you did to us, but we won't, not yet. This is just the beginning. This is us announcing that we're back," Tony Wright reported from his station. "Sir, we're detecting massive fleet movements throughout hegemony space. They're mobilizing everything they have." Steve nodded. He had expected this. The galaxy was about to learn that humanity's return was not limited to one system. "All ships prepare for quantum jump," he ordered. "We have 11 more worlds to visit today." As the human fleet prepared to leave, Steve opened the communication channel one last time. "Tell your leaders," he said. "Tell the Nexari Collective. Tell every species in the Hegemony Alliance. The humans have returned and we remember everything. Every murdered child, every burned world, every broken promise. We remember it all, and we're going to collect the debt you owe us." The Vengeance and her escort fleet vanished into quantum space, leaving Draktar Prime in ruins. The planet's military was destroyed, its government in chaos, its people terrified of shadows from their past. But they were alive. Steve had made sure of that. The galaxy needed to see what human mercy looked like, so they would understand what human justice would bring. In the hours that followed, similar scenes played out across 12 star systems. The Nexari Collective's hive worlds found their telepathic networks shattered by human psi jammers. The aquatic Delphani Federation watched their underwater cities burn as human submarines, perfected over 3,000 years, struck from the depths. Each attack was precise, professional, and absolutely devastating. Military targets were destroyed completely. Government facilities were reduced to rubble, but civilian populations were left untouched, witnesses to humanity's return. The message was the same everywhere. Humanity was back. They remembered everything, and this was just the beginning. By the end of the day, the galaxy that had spent 3,000 years in peaceful comfort was in complete chaos. Alien governments that had ruled unchallenged for millennia suddenly found themselves helpless against an enemy they thought was extinct. Emergency sessions were called on every hegemony world. Military leaders who had never faced a real threat scrambled to understand what was happening. Scientists tried to figure out how human technology had become so advanced. But the real shock was psychological. For 3,000 years, the hegemony had lived with the comfortable knowledge that they had solved the human problem. They had removed the violent, unpredictable species from the galaxy and made space safe for civilized races. Now they discovered that extinction and exile were not the same thing. The humans they had tried to erase had instead become something far more dangerous than anything they had ever faced. The first day of humanity's return ended with 12 hegemony, worlds in ruins and billions of aliens staring at the sky in fear. They had wanted the galaxy without humans. Now they were going to learn what the galaxy was like when humans were angry. General Paul Davis watched the Nexari hive ships die in the cold vacuum of space. Their telepathic screams echoed through dimensions as human side jammers turned their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. The insectoid aliens who had provided the hegemony's military muscle for 3,000 years were learning what it felt like to be helpless. Hive Queen 7 is requesting surrender, reported his communications officer. Paul's face remained stone cold. Tell her that surrender was what we offered 3,000 years ago. Today we're offering justice. The Nexari Collective had been the backbone of the hegemony military. Their hive minds could coordinate millions of drones across vast distances, making them perfect soldiers. But human scientists had spent centuries studying telepathic species, and they had found the weakness. When a hive mind broke, it broke completely. The PSI jammers sent focused bursts of chaotic human thought into the Nexari networks. 3,000 years of exile, loss, and rage, compressed into pure mental energy and fired directly into alien consciousness. The orderly insect mind simply couldn't process such raw emotion. Across the Nexari home systems, billions of drones suddenly found themselves alone in their own heads for the first time in their lives. Without the constant guidance of their queens, they wandered aimlessly, unable to function. The most efficient military force in the galaxy had become a collection of confused insects. Meanwhile, on the ocean world of Aquinas, Captain Laura Mitchell prepared her submarine for the final assault. The Delphani Federation had made a special request to the hegemony 3,000 years ago. They wanted to be the ones to hunt down human refugees trying to hide in water worlds. Target the capital city, Laura ordered. Let's show them how humans learned to fight underwater. Her submarine was a work of art, designed by 3,000 years of human innovation. While the galaxy had forgotten about naval warfare, humans had perfected it. The Delphani thought their underwater cities were safe because no other species could fight effectively beneath the waves. They were wrong. Human torpedoes, guided by quantum targeting systems, struck the Delphani capital with devastating precision. The aquatic aliens had built their civilization around the belief that they owned the oceans. They were about to learn that humans had become the ultimate marine predators. Direct hit on the government complex, reported the weapons officer. Their entire leadership structure just went dark. Laura watched the destruction through her periscope. The Delphani had voted enthusiastically for the human genocide. They had volunteered to track down families trying to escape to water worlds. Now their own cities were burning beneath the waves they thought protected them. But the most difficult mission was happening on Kepler 442b, a world that had once been the human colony of New Hope. Commander Alex Thompson led a strike team through forests that his grandparents had planted, past rivers they had named, toward cities they had built. The world was now inhabited by hegemony civilians who genuinely believed it had always been theirs. They had families here, children who had been born on this soil, Alex found himself facing an impossible question. Were these people invaders or innocent victims of a lie? "Sir, we've reached the settlement," reported Sergeant Baker. "There are about 10,000 aliens here. Mostly families." Alex looked through his binoculars at alien children playing in parks that humans had designed. Their parents worked in buildings that human architects had planned. They lived peaceful lives on a world built with human blood and dreams. "What are your orders, sir?" asked the sergeant. Alex was quiet for a long moment. This was not what he had expected to find. He had come here ready to fight soldiers, not to decide the fate of innocent families. "Set up a perimeter," he finally said. "No hostile action until I figure this out." Back in space, Dr. Helen Baker was making discoveries that complicated humanity's mission even further. As the chief intelligence analyst for the fleet, she was processing captured data from hegemony worlds. What she found challenged everything they thought they knew about the genocide. "Admiral Stone, you need to see this," she said over the communication link. Kevin Stone's face appeared on her screen from the flagship. "What is it, Doctor?" Helen pulled up classified hegemony documents that human hackers had stolen from government databases. "Sir, the genocide was classified even within the hegemony itself. Most of the member species didn't know it was happening." Kevin's expression darkened. "Explain." "The Karathi Empire and the Nexari Collective planned and executed the human extermination, but they told the other species that humans had simply left the galaxy voluntarily. Only the leadership of each species knew the truth. This changed everything. For 3,000 years, humanity had planned revenge against all 12 hegemony species. But if most of them didn't even know about the genocide, were they really guilty?" Helen continued reading from the files. "It gets worse, sir. Some species actually protested the exile order. The Centauri Republic voted against it. The Altarian Confederacy tried to offer humans sanctuary." Kevin felt something cold settle in his stomach. "Are you telling me we've been attacking innocent species?" "Some of them, yes, sir. The foot soldiers who carried out the actual killings were mostly Karathi and Nexari. The other species just followed orders without knowing what those orders really meant. Across the galaxy, human forces were discovering similar truths. The war they had planned for 3,000 years was not as simple as they had believed. The galaxy was not filled with evil aliens who had voted to destroy humanity. It was filled with ordinary people who had been lied to by their leaders. Commander Thompson finally made his decision about the civilians on Kepler 442b. He walked into the alien settlement alone, his hands visible and empty. The alien families gathered around him, afraid but curious. They had heard the news from other worlds. They knew humans had returned, but they didn't understand why humans would care about their little farming community. "My name is Commander Alex Thompson," he said in the universal trade language. "This world was once called New Hope. It was a human colony." The alien mayor stepped forward nervously. "We were told this world was uninhabited when our people found it. We've been here for 2,000 years. Alex nodded slowly. "I know, you were lied to. The humans who lived here were murdered, and then your people were moved in to replace them. You're not the criminals. You're just another kind of victim." The revelation spread through the settlement like wildfire. These aliens had built their lives on a foundation of lies and genocide. Their children were playing in graveyards they didn't know existed. "What happens to us now?" asked the mayor. Alex looked around at the community that had been built on his people's bones. "I don't know," he said honestly. "That's not my decision to make. But for now you're safe. We're not here to hurt innocent people." As reports came in from across the galaxy, Admiral Stone faced the hardest decision of his career. The war humanity had planned was based on the assumption that all hegemony species were equally guilty. But the truth was more complicated than that. Some aliens had enthusiastically participated in the genocide. Others had followed orders without knowing what they meant. And some had even tried to help humans escape. The question now was whether humanity could be satisfied with justice against the actual criminals, or whether 3,000 years of anger would demand a broader revenge. Paul Davis finished destroying the last Nexari hive ship and opened a communication channel to Admiral Stone. "Sir, the collective is broken. Their military is completely disabled. What are your orders for the civilian populations?" Kevin stared out at the stars, weighing the choices that would define humanity's future. They had the power to destroy everything, but power and wisdom were not the same thing. "Stand by, General," he said. "We're going to figure out what justice really looks like." President Carroll Johnson stood before the new Galactic Assembly on the rebuilt station of New Geneva. 1 year had passed since humanity's return, and the galaxy had changed beyond recognition. The old hegemony was gone, its leaders dead or imprisoned, its military scattered to the winds. In their place sat representatives from dozens of species, all looking to humanity for guidance. Some with fear, some with hope, all with the knowledge that the balance of power had shifted forever. "The question before us today," Carroll said to the assembled delegates, "is not whether humans have the right to rule this galaxy. We've already proven we have the power. The question is what kind of rulers we choose to be." In the audience, former enemies sat beside former victims. Korathi generals who had surrendered rather than fight to the death. Nixari queens whose hive minds had been shattered and rebuilt. Species that had been oppressed by the hegemony for thousands of years and now saw humans as their liberators. Admiral Kevin Stone watched from the observer's gallery. The military phase of humanity's return was over. They had won the war in 6 months, destroying or capturing every major hegemony military asset. But winning the peace was proving much harder. Jake Morrison, now the governor of the former Korathi territories, faced daily decisions that would have been unthinkable a year ago. His morning briefing included reports on refugee camps, economic reconstruction, and the trial of war criminals. The simple goal of revenge had become the complex reality of governance. "The survivors of New Boston have been reburied with full honors," his aide reported. The memorial service drew representatives from 12 worlds. Jake nodded, but his mind was elsewhere. Yesterday, a group of young Korathi had asked him why humans looked so angry all the time. How do you explain 3,000 years of exile to children who were born after the war ended? Dr. Frank Williams had been studying that exact question. As the fleet's chief psychologist, he was tasked with understanding what the exile had done to humanity's collective mind. His findings were disturbing. "We're not the same species that was banished from this galaxy," he reported to the Leadership Council. 3,000 years of isolation, loss, and focused anger has fundamentally changed human psychology. "We're harder, more aggressive, more willing to use violence to solve problems." President Johnson looked up from her notes. "Are you saying we've become what they accused us of being?" Frank hesitated before answering. "In some ways, yes. The humans who were exiled were naive enough to trust that their enemies would keep their word. We're not naive anymore, but we're also not evil. We're just different." The changes were visible everywhere. Human children born after the return were faster, stronger, and smarter than their ancestors. But they were also colder, more calculating. The genetic modifications that had helped humanity survive in exile had created something new. Captain Laura Mitchell discovered this firsthand when she tried to integrate human and Delphani crews on her submarine. The young humans couldn't understand why they should trust aliens. They had been raised on stories of betrayal and genocide. "They saved us from drowning," explained a Delphani engineer who had joined Laura's crew. The human ensign looked confused. "So? They're the ones who tried to kill us in the first place." It was the kind of conversation that happened every day across the galaxy. Humans who couldn't forget what had been done to them, aliens who couldn't understand why humans wouldn't just move on. Commander Alex Thompson found himself caught in the middle of these tensions on Kepler 442b. The alien families who had lived there for 2,000 years wanted to stay. Human refugees wanted to return to their ancestral home. Both sides had legitimate claims. "We could force them to leave," suggested his aide. "We have the power." Alex shook his head. "Having power and using it are different things. If we start throwing innocent families off their worlds, how are we better than the hegemony?" But that question was becoming harder to answer every day. Some human leaders argued for a complete reversal. Exile all former hegemony species to the galaxy's edge, the way humans had been exiled. Others wanted a more measured approach, focusing on justice rather than revenge. The debate came to a head during the trial of Emperor Krathus, the former Korathi leader who had ordered the human genocide. He stood in chains before a human tribunal, his reptilian features showing no emotion. "You were weak," he said when asked to explain his actions. "Chaotic. Unpredictable. The galaxy was better without you." Judge Williams, no relation to the psychologist, leaned forward. "And now?" Kratos looked around the courtroom at the human guards, the alien observers, the representatives of species that had once bowed to his empire. Now you've proven my point. Look what you've become. Look what the exile made you. It was true, and everyone in the room knew it. The humans sitting in judgment were not the same people who had been banished 3,000 years ago. They were something harder, more dangerous, arguably more alien than the aliens they had conquered. The verdict was never in doubt. Kratos and his co-conspirators were sentenced to death for genocide. But his words lingered in everyone's minds. Had humanity won the war only to lose its soul? President Johnson found herself thinking about that question as she walked through the memorial garden on New Geneva Station. Each tree represented a human world that had been destroyed. Each flower marked 1,000,000 lives lost. The garden was beautiful and heartbreaking at the same time. "Mama, why do the aliens look scared when they see us?" asked a small voice. Johnson turned to see a human child, maybe 6 years old, standing with her father. The little girl had the enhanced features that marked her as part of the new generation: brighter eyes, quicker reflexes, a mind that could process information faster than any baseline human. The father struggled to answer. How do you explain genocide and revenge to a child? How do you tell her that people are afraid because they know what humans are capable of when they're angry? "Because we're different from them," he finally said. "And sometimes different things can be scary." Johnson watched them walk away, hand in hand. The child represented humanity's future, genetically enhanced, psychologically adapted to survival, raised on stories of betrayal and triumph. But was it a future worth having? That evening, the Leadership Council met to discuss the most important question they had ever faced. Admiral Stone, President Johnson, and the other senior leaders sat around a table that had once belonged to the Hegemony High Council. "We could rule through fear," said General Davis. "It would be easier. They're already afraid of us. We could use that. Or we could try to build something better," countered Dr. Baker. "Show them that humans can be trusted with power." Kevin Stone listened to the debate without speaking. Finally, President Johnson asked for his opinion. "What kind of galaxy do we want our children to inherit?" he said quietly. "One where power comes from the barrel of a gun? Or one where it comes from respect?" The decision they made that night would echo through history. Humanity had the power to become the galaxy's conquerors or its protectors. They could rule through fear or earn loyalty through justice. In the end, they chose something more difficult than either option. They chose to try to build a better galaxy while fighting against their own nature, to be strong enough to defend the innocent, but wise enough not to become the oppressors they had overthrown. It wouldn't be easy. 3,000 years of exile had changed humanity in ways that couldn't be undone. They were harder, more aggressive, more willing to use violence, but they were also more determined, more resilient, and more protective of the innocent. The galaxy would never again underestimate humanity. But whether that was a blessing or a curse remained to be seen. The exile was over, the revenge was complete, but the real test was just beginning. Humanity had returned to the galaxy as conquerors. Now they had to learn how to live in it as protectors. The stars that had once rejected them were now theirs to safeguard. And somewhere in the darkness between galaxies, the echo of their exile served as a reminder of what happens when civilizations forget that mercy and strength must walk hand in hand.